Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do. But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy. They're just gonna remember some guys now.
6-run lead with 1 out remaining for a national title. Bounder over to the right side. Easy play, and Vantro Reed, who else, puts a finishing touch on this one as perfection wears purple. And remember that guy, the show where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. Hey there, folks. It's me, one of your hosts, James. And in a time where pilots and perfection between HBO and Shreveport, it's on the tip of everyone's tongue, I am ready to talk with a guy who's always flying high.
Flying high, fly Eagles fly. Diaz back with you once again, and we do have a very special guest. He is a person who does not have a head coach for his favorite basketball team. Please introduce yourself.
It's funny, with that pause, I thought you were just going to say, he is a person. I was like, you know what? That is accurate.
Who was it? Ish Smith is a point guard. Xavier Perez is a person.
That's right. It's me, the very special guest, Xavier. And as I had said in last week's episode, I was assuming that would be the end of that current Knicks team. They did win one more game, but I was extremely right in that Tom Thibodeau is out as Knicks coach. It is a very sad moment for a team that was crap for 20 plus years and then made the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, including at least the conference semifinals 3 years in a row. There are difficult emotions with that, where there is a significant portion of the fan base that thinks he did the most that he could do here. The phrase I saw a lot is, he is a floor raiser, now we need a ceiling raiser. And I, to a degree, based on his track record with the Bulls and the T-Wolves, I do agree that that is accurate. I assume the Knicks are probably going to hire someone who has won a title, most likely Michael Malone. I would assume he already spent 5 years as a Knicks assistant coach, won a title with the Nuggets. I guess it depends on if he wants to stay at ESPN.
Jay Wright.
I mean, he's won titles. He might not have won NBA titles, but he's won titles. But
you need to get Jay Wright, and you need to trade back for Dante DiVincenzo. And then you're set. Then the Popes all the way behind you. Everyone that split the Pope's attention, both of those teams lost. And that was the problem. They divided the Pope's rooting interests. He did not have enough of a divine hand to influence both series. And in trying to save everyone, he was able to save no one. And so you need to get Dante DiVincenzo back and hire Jay Wright.
I mean, we'll see what happens. It wouldn't surprise me if the Knicks did anything this summer other than trading Jalen Brunson. Like, the Mikal Bridges trade initially was totally expected by Knicks fans. No one expected Cat would come by a trade. And from the statements that the Knicks have put out, Leon Rose, he never talks. He hasn't done like a press conference since he was hired. But the man has made some very significant moves that have made the Knicks a good team. So it would not surprise me if something crazy happened and someone who we think of as a key member of the team is not back next year, because the salary cap is a myth and good teams always find ways to get around it. But hopefully this can be like the Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr change for the Warriors, where, they make the playoffs for 2 years in a row for the first time in 20 years under Mark Jackson, fire him, Steve Kerr wins 3 titles in the next 4 years. Like, I don't need 3 titles in the next 4 years. I'll take 1 in the next 4 years. I'll take 1 at all. But basketball has a lot of these where teams get close, then ditch their coach because they think that's like the last piece they need. And Tibbs is a great regular season coach, so I get it. But if this backfires, if they have a bad season next year and they don't make it at least the conference finals, there's going to be a lot of, New York's a laughingstock again. And I really hope that doesn't happen.
It's a really delicate place for vibes, because I think you're right. Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr is a great example. I was thinking Bob Hill to Popovich. Like, that's clearly some different circumstances. If I'm not mistaken, Bob Hill in both of his seasons as San Antonio's head coach before the one where he got fired at least 40, if not 50 win teams going to the playoffs. And then he's canned for Popovich. You broke the news to me, and I didn't know how disappointed to be for you. Good job at maintaining a stiff upper lip.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I already, waxed lyrical about this team last week. I don't need to do it again. I hope that we have a good finals. I hope OKC wins just because I think they're a fantastic team. But we'll see what happens. But that is not what's making memories for me. So I am going to break with tradition and actually go first here before we even say anything, because I need to talk about the Women's College World Series. I am not going to talk about Appendix G because I figured you might want to talk about that part.
I mean, all I have to say about it is I think a basic failing in our society is that we're like, oh, well, it says right there that XYZ, a ball was hit over a fence. It's a home run. And it doesn't need to be any deeper than that. It doesn't have to be any deeper than that. That's all I have to say.
It's the if it's cool, it should count rule, kind of, where if you have an awesome dunk, but they get called for a charge, if it looks cool, just have the point. Here, we know it's a home run. Celebrating, she jumps and slightly goes over the base, over home plate, and then touches it. Thankfully, because of Appendix G that said you can't review that, call on the field stands. So they got that enjoyment, and then Tennessee won anyway, so Tennessee still doesn't have to complain too much. But the thing I actually want to talk about is Texas Tech. I had briefly talked, I think a month or so ago, about Stanford and their struggles during the NIL era because of their institutional belief that no one would leave Stanford. We're Stanford. We don't have to, pay people. Well, one person who did leave Stanford is Nigeri Kennedy. And I think I may have mentioned her in the past.
Yes,
but she is
in the exact same breath as that.
Yes,
previous one.
She is the first She's the first $1 million softball player, and she is fucking playing like it. Texas Tech, first ever appearance in the College World Series, now in the championship against Texas, and it is because they are riding the player they paid $1 million to get. So, just a couple statistics for you guys. They have played this was through May 31st, so this doesn't even include the games from yesterday. Through 64 games, she started 35 of them. She's pitched in 42 of them. She is 32-5 with a .86 ERA, 296 strikeouts in 219 innings. She is also hitting 300 and leading the team in home runs with 11. They are getting their money's worth on this. And there's a fascinating article talking about them getting their money's worth on this. And, there's a lot of upset Texas Tech fans like this don't, downplay our achievements. And they're right, because Oklahoma overall paid their team way more than Texas Tech is paying their team. It just, Texas Tech has Kennedy. By beating Oklahoma 3-2, defeating the team that had won 4 straight national championships, we now have a chance for a new champion. And it's because this school was aggressive. Texas Tech is not, a big money school. They're not in a big SEC school. Of course, they're a Big 12 team, so they're not fucking Temple or anything like that. But they're not even Oklahoma State, where Oklahoma State is T. Boone Pickens giving them $50 billion and shit. They decided they wanted to invest in women's softball, and it worked. And I love that. I want teams to do that. Be like, this is the thing that we can be good at. We're going to invest in this sport. And it worked out. And I hope they win against Texas because I want to see this happen more. I want schools to say, let's invest in women's sports, because if we get a good player, it's going to come back to us in spades. And so I'm really excited to see, how things happen from there. I'm excited that we'll see a non-Oklahoma champion for the first time in a while since pre-COVID. But yeah, I've really been enjoying the Women's College World Series a lot.
The only issue, Xavier, is I personally can't allow Patrick Mahomes to be happy about a championship. It's great that they made it this far. It's great that they made it this far. I do need Patrick Mahomes to watch a team he cares about get their fucking teeth kicked in for another championship game, if you don't mind.
But then Texas is happy. And do we want that?
That's not true. That fan base always seems miserable. I'm not worried about that.
Well, if you're not worried about Texas being happy or miserable, James, what are you possibly worried about?
Gosh, you know what? I'm worried I might have already watched the best stage of cycling in my life. I'm worried that I may have already seen what will be one of like the great Grand Tour performances. Hey folks, drop in for some cycling. Diaz and Xavier got a lot more, and the general Discord. And hey, if you're ever interested in catching up with the Discord and hearing about the sports that we watch on a day-to-day basis, you can find the information for that at bit.ly/remember that guy, all one word, all lowercase. Anyway, if you get there, one of the things you'll get is me spamming things about cycling every once in a while. Particularly this time, I just got very obsessed with the cinematography, and I was enjoying sharing that with everyone during a very good 2025 Giro d'Italia. And then all of a sudden, while doing that, I ended up almost accidentally watching one of the greatest tour stages that we have seen in some time. And I really just want to like take some time to try and put in perspective to people who do not follow cycling why this is so great, and why if you go back and watch literally just like the 20-minute highlights from this stage, I think you will watch an incredibly fun and digestible snippet of a sport that I want more people to participate in. So, couple things to know. As with all grand tours, it's not necessarily about the winners of the individual stages, of which most of them are made up of 21. It is about the winner of the general classification. That is the total time for the entire course, all 21 most of the time stages. And the other thing to know about, in particular, the Giro d'Italia, much like the Tour de France, the final day is kind of like a ceremonial gimme. Last year was very weird in that Tour de France had a time trial. It's because Paris was hosting the Olympics. All of this to say is most of the time they just go to the capital city, be it Rome or Paris, and a lot of it is just like the guy who won by then gets celebrated as the guy who won, and they fet him for a short course. The other thing to know is that there are not positions, so to speak, in cycling, but there are like buckets that riders fall into. You have sprinters, you have poncheurs is one of my favorite ones to say. That's for guys who are like really good at rolling hills quick up and down. Domestique is another great title. That's the title for like a really good guy on a team who's not the best guy and will go up and like hold a spot for someone before he drops down and helps their best guy go up after conserving energy throughout a day. There is one particular one of these buckets that also happens to coincide with, quote, GC riders, like the guys on a team that a team is going into a race hoping will be the winners. They're the ones they sink their energy behind, and other racers are there to help them win. And most of the time, those GC riders, the bucket they fall into is they are true climbers. They are dudes who tackle mountains. And in a grand tour, those big climbs are where the biggest gaps are made. These are like the set pieces of a grand tour. And the biggest one is always going to be in that, not always the biggest one, but one of the big ones will always be in that penultimate stage. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones, in which the second to last one, the penultimate installation, is the really exciting one that you are there to see that will determine it. The climb taking center stage in the 20th stage this time was the Colle de Finestre. There's a whole bunch of history about having a fort and shit. All you need to know is it's a really big mountain that can be cycled in Italy. It is the highest peak of the race, the Cima Coppi, which is not a permanent title. It's just one that, you know, is whatever the highest climb that year is. 18.6 kilometers long, so you're climbing the mountain for that long, going up 1,694 total meters. It is a 9% gradient most of the way up with a 14 peak percent. Most of the rides that I do, like in Baltimore, just pretty hilly, we're maxing out at 7 and we're normally averaging like 5%. So this is an insane climb. And now we need to know 3 main characters and 3 secondary characters for this, and this will go through a little bit faster. The first secondary character is Tadej Pogačar, who's the greatest cyclist in the world. You've all heard me say his name many times. He also is not participating in it this year after winning last year, so that's very important. It's a wide open field because the greatest cycler in the world isn't there.
See, I was going to ask you that. Do we know why he isn't? Because
it's just not part of his. So racers will like build out their schedules at the start of a season. They'll maybe feature some like of the one-day monuments early on, maybe do like one shorter week-long tour, and then build to most people really contesting for one grand tour. So like Yeah, today has won one of all three of the main ones, and he did it was an enormous deal when he won the Hero and the Tour both last year. Normally you don't do these back to back. And the Tour de France is the big money. So he's waiting for that. He's not in it. A teammate of his from UAE, the Emirates team, that is the big cycling team, oil money, Juan Ayuso of Spain. He was kind of set up to be the GC rider for UAE. He was the guy that all those other bikers are going to kind of push to get forward. But he has a knee injury early on, eventually ends up falling out because of an allergic reaction to a bee sting near his eye. And there's this teammate of his, Isaac del Toro, really young guy out of Mexico. Like, this is by far the most high profile race he's been a major player into this point. He had been just the other good UAE guy this time, had kind of like gotten some really good finishes early on. And then he grabs the Maglia Rosa. He is one of our three main characters here, taking over from secondary character Juan Ayuso, because he, at the end of stage 8, all of a sudden has the pink jersey on. It's pink in the Giro d'Italia instead of the Tour de France is yellow. And he just wears it for the next 11 fucking stages. Like, Isaac del Toro was not expected to be a player in this at all. And just dominates it for almost the entire race. Even in like stages 16, 17, back-to-back, 16, he takes a big fall behind a couple of his main competitors. Not like an actual crash, but just doesn't keep up with an attack they make from a leading group and loses a bunch of seconds. He's still in the lead, but it's looking dicey. And then he comes back. Stage win on stage 17. Like, really establishes, no, I'm here till the bitter end for this fight. And so all of this comes into stage 19 with him and two other main competitors, or other two main characters. Richard Carapaz, Ecuadorian, one of my favorites on the tour, like largely really big fan of Carapaz. Trains at altitude in Ecuador, so a very good climber. He has won the Hero already in 2019. He got 2020 Olympic gold in the road race. He is the only person to be a podium finisher for all three Grand Tours and win a gold medal, so very accomplished biker. Simon Yates is the other main competitor as we head into the final day. He's about like a minute and 21 off, whereas Carapaz is 43 off going into this final day. And Simon Yates, he's British. He has won a Vuelta a España. And in 2018, he looked like he was going to get his Giro d'Italia win. 7 years ago, looked for all the world heading into one of the last stages that he was going to win this, and he'd have, two now of the main Grand Tours would have been huge for him. And yet, he comes to this Chimacopi, tallest stage of the tour, and just absolutely eats shit in stage 19. Like, loses dozens of minutes to an attacking group led by Chris Froome, who is not only a countryman of his, but used to be his roommate in certain like international tournaments for Britain. They had been roommates together. So he dusts him. He ends up winning the tour instead. And the last thing to know, the endurance races in America, the Boston Marathon, or a similar length one, the Iditarod, those hew to pretty consistent courses. The Grand Tours change every single year. And so that's why I was saying, like, the Chimacopi, it's a term that'll move from peak to peak because it depends what peaks they're going through. So they design them different every year. And while something like the Colle dei Finestre had been featured in 4 of the past 13 Giro d'Italias when that most recent one happened in 2018, this was the first time that it had been in the race again since 2018, since Simon Yates' absolute choke job.
So is it like the Barkley Ultramarathons where it's one specific area, but they can change how they want to do it like each year, like to kind of stump them, or
even more different? Honestly, like, even more different. The thing is, they will finish in the same place and they'll go through a lot of the country. But they will very often like move from, okay, this year we're going to do track 14 that goes over this one-day races, like the majority of its track that they do at some other time in the season. And some racers will be familiar with that then, and it'll create different strategies over like which racers the team sends. Oh, he's gotten a lot of experience in that region of Belgium. We'll make sure he's on this tour. But it like really, for the Hero, you end in Rome. They started in 2018 in Israel, because they were acknowledging like some Italian Jew who had smuggled a bunch of people out of Germany during World War II. Like, it was for a cool reason, but they started in fucking
nonsense.
But those are the two racers coming in. It was Richard Carapaz, Simon Yates against Isaac del Toro, who's proven his worth going into this. They are hoping to tackle the Colle dei Finestre for the first time since Simon Yates choked on the Colle. And it's the three of them, along with a couple others, Derek G, 4th place finisher, like in this not the most attacking group. Again, another person, shout outs to Chris Harper, who is the Australian that actually won this stage and got cheered on. And then 2 minutes later, everyone else went buck wild when the winner came through of the GC, because we have these three more or less alone in an attacking group. They're doing the whole kind of prisoner's dilemma thing that you do in cycling, where it's like, well, I'm not going to start an attack if you're just going to come behind me and sit on my wheel and then like bust off later on. Okay, well then I'm not going to either. And everyone's kind of locked into it. And Simon Yates, with the least to lose, he's there at the bottom of these three, just goes off pretty close to the like beginning of the Col de Finestre, just bikes off and very quickly out of sight, about 40 seconds ahead within minutes, but then holds at 40 seconds. You think maybe the two of them will do it. Simon Yates is just conquering this mountain solo. He is completely alone at this point. He knows that there is one other secondary character, Wout van Aert, a great Dutchman who is also on the brand new team that Simon Yates joined this year, Visma, which is one of like the two big ones. It's the one that has Tadej Pogacar's like biggest Tour de France competitor, Jonas Vingegaard, but Jonas Vingegaard's not there. Wout van Aert is the best teammate he has, and he knows he's in the attacking group ahead of him. So if he can beat the mountain that beat him, he can get to that teammate and get carried out the rest of the way, pretty much. It's guaranteed. And so the whole climb up those 18.6 kilometers, which ends up taking like 20, 30 minutes, you're basically just on the edge of your seat. Will Simon Yates hold them off? And the two of them, Carapaz and Del Toro, just keep not attacking. They just stay at the pace they kind of came into. They're not losing on any time on the people behind them, but you just see this lead for Yates growing. It's 20 seconds. It's 40 seconds. It's 2 minutes by the time he gets up to the Col de Finestre. And shortly thereafter on the descent, again, they kind of tap out at 2 minutes for a while. And then he gets to Wout van Aert and he's just gone. And the whole time you're just watching Carapaz and Del Toro just fighting this out basically. And they're both playing not to lose is what they're doing. They don't want to tire themselves out and then let people come behind them because like there are other guys up there. Derek G is up there who could spoil someone's podium finish, theoretically. And they just play not to lose for so long that neither of them essentially plays to win. He ends up putting 5 minutes and 17 seconds into the GC. So the crowd, when Simon Yates comes up there, now leading by over 3.5 minutes in the general classification, they just go absolutely apeshit. It is unquestionably the peak of his career. This is the pinnacle of Simon Yates' entire race career. Fucking incredible stage. Go back and watch it. Stage 20 of the 2025 Hero. I'm not joking. Like, this is going to be one that gets played again and again and again in the future because coming into this, Simon Yates and Col de Finestre, it was literally the worst day of his life up until this point as a professional cyclist. It was synonymous to him with the most utter failure he has ever put on a world stage. And the very first chance, 7 years later, that he gets to, with a perfect Hollywood script flip that, it is now the site of his greatest achievement. Fucking unreal. I loved every second of it.
And, we loved the play-by-play that you were giving to us in our group chat. As someone who doesn't watch a lot of cycling, the passion of I could feel through the phone of you just screenshot after screenshot after screenshot. I was like, all right, this does feel pretty cool. And I'm
now, don't watch this and think everything's going to be like this. I want to make it very clear. This is like the most viewer-friendly and like intro viewer-friendly that I've ever seen. There is one shot. And it's just as he's gotten the lead out to about 2 minutes, where he's coming up on like the third pass of a switchback climb. And you, the viewer, the camera gets a quick shot from one of the motorcycle guys following behind him. You see at the bottom of that hill, about to tackle this like significant portion, you see Isaac Del Toro and Richard Carapaz. And you're like, oh my God, if he gets a chance to see how far ahead of them he is right now. And the announcer is saying that exact thing just as he turns his head to the left over his shoulder, catches a glimpse of them. And it doesn't like change his pace, but you like immediately turns back and you could sense like he fucking knows that he has this. It was unbelievable.
We've talked about some exciting cycling. We've talked about some women's sports. I want to talk about some women's sports, also some men's sports, but primarily the official unifying soccer team of this podcast, the Indianapolis Blues FC.
Is this the only team we all root for?
I think it is. Because,
and
like,
Temple.
even like, right, well, yeah, and Temple, but also the Indianapolis Blues, who are making their debut season in the USL after playing in the NPSL for their first 2 seasons. And the men are playing in USL League 2. And the reason that I need to make that clarification is because the Blues, in their third season, have added a women's team. They are competing in the USLW League. It was the home debut for both teams on Saturday. And first off, the men, they lead off. What do? They not only set their own franchise home attendance record, they also set the USL League 2 attendance record in their first ever game in that league. The official number coming in at 12,853. Not to be outdone, the women play right after, and I think weather had a little bit to do with it. It got cold and windy out of nowhere. Also, just a long day of soccer. Game 2, you expect there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off, but there is still a USLW League attendance record of 7,289 to come out to see the Blues women play. And if you are one of the fans, you went home happy. If you stayed for both games, you went doubly happy because in both games, the Blues outplay their opposition but can't quite get a goal in the first half. It goes in 0-0 at half. The men end up finding 2 goals to win 2-0. The women, just the one, but it's still enough to win 1-0. As we record on Tuesday, tomorrow will be the solo debut for the women, not in a doubleheader format. They have a 7 p.m. Wednesday night game playing against the Charlottesville Blues. So it is some blue on blue crime.
Oh my God.
It's going to be very blue. It's going to be excessive. I don't know what I'm going to do as a graphics producer to differentiate the 2 colors on the scoreboard. We're going to have to do, hopefully, one's lighter, one's darker. We get some shades.
Do you have the one blue song? Like, do you guys have the ability to play any portion of that?
So, an important distinction to make. We on the broadcast absolutely cannot. We do not have the rights to that.
But the stadium can.
The stadium can play it.
Okay.
And when we used to do the games to Facebook Live, this did trick the Facebook algorithm into thinking that we were using copyrighted content on the broadcast. It's like, no, we are broadcasting a place that is playing this song.
Yeah,
we
it's
are
not illegal
playing
if
the
they
song.
do it.
Exactly. We're not playing the song. We're just doing a broadcast in which the song is being played. That was a little too complex for the Facebook algorithm. But short answer, yes, they do play it. They play it for goals. It's amazing. And look, it's gonna be a fun summer of Blues soccer down in Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. There are, like, I've seen online comments. I don't think this is actually in the works, but it's like the Annapolis Blues could build like 15,000 seat solo use stadium, and they would just about fill it out every single time. It's remarkable. We interviewed the deputy CEO of the USL before, and I think he said it best. It's the best story in U.S. soccer that not enough people are talking about. I mean, like, there are MLS teams that don't get the numbers that the Blues get for every game. It's remarkable. It is incredible. Up the Blues. They're going to continue. Long may they reign. Long may they win. Both teams. I'm not going to finish the sentence because, this podcast does jinx these things. But both teams are playing pretty well this year. I'll just say that. I won't say anything specific about their records. But it's a blast. And just a great organization to work with. And up the Blues. On NBC Sports Engine, which I learned right before we did our first broadcast for that, is a thing that exists. But NBC Sports Engine, check it out.
I should clarify, they are not a blast, only because that's the other championship level soccer team in the state of Maryland in the major indoor soccer league.
I will make that careful distinction. They're having a good time.
Unless we can get the two together, unless there's some synergy potential. It is weird that Maryland does so well at supporting the more obscure soccer teams, but like the Blast fucking did numbers, and I'm thrilled to hear that the Blues are doing numbers.
Didn't Maryland also have the Crystal Palace American team?
Completely possible. Couldn't tell you officially, though.
Crystal Palace, Baltimore. Found it. Yep.
Crystal Palace, Baltimore.
It's like Chivas USA.
Hey, speaking of numbers, there's a lot of numbers in the fancy terms that Xavier's going to be throwing around in a moment in his presentation this week as we continue our season of game-breaking guys here in season 13. Xavier will be presenting one that will join the ranks of the 3 we already have. I'm going to see if I can name all 3 off the top of my head. I almost certainly can't. Leo Diegel is the fucking pitcher whose name is Pud Galvin. And yeah, no, I'm sorry, Xavier.
It's Jason Belmonte.
Oh my God, Jason Belmonte, the bowling sensation with 2 hands from Australia.
Yes.
Crikey.
Hit the crikey. Yes.
But no, Xavier's got someone else to add to that who will eventually be considered at the end of the season, along with all these illustrious guys as we continue this change in format. Xavier, let's change the topic to your topic. What you got for us this week?
So this is a guy that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, and there was never a good spot to do it. And I think this is probably the best category to finally bring him up and give him his due. And that's the man who broke skateboarding to become the godfather of modern street skating, Rodney Mullen.
I'm very excited for this one. I've been looking forward to it since you mentioned it. Man, skateboarding video games just hit such a particular itch.
You know, I can't wait for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 remake to come out next month. I'm going to play the heck out of that at 1 a.m. while holding my son. Rodney was born August 17, 1966 in Gainesville, Florida, and he came from a very accomplished family. So his mother was a classical pianist who graduated high school when she was 14, became a physicist. His dad was a dentist and property developer who also was an inventor that built self-propelled vacuums. And despite all of this, he didn't grow up where you might expect. He grew up out in the very rural Gainesville area on a farm, like pretty far away from a lot of things. When Rodney was 10, he told his dad he wanted to skateboard. And his dad said, no fucking way. Skateboarding is for bums. You're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, etc. And Rodney did it anyway. Because his family had a barn, and that was the only concrete surface around, he would spend hours and hours practicing in the barn. And after about a year, he goes to Jacksonville and finishes 5th in the boys' freestyle competition at the U.S. Open Championships. It's important to note the differences here. So a lot of skating that you see on things like the X Games and a lot of skating in, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it's a lot of vert skating where, it's in a bowl, off ramps, in a pool, etc. At this point, Rodney was a freestyle skater, which is just flat ground. There's no obstacles. We're not at street skating yet where, they invent little obstacles for you to go in a street course. It's pure just ground.
It's like flat rhythmic gymnastics with
yes.
a skateboard. Yeah,
and at this point, it is kind of like dancing on there because there aren't really tricks that you do. It's more like a choreographed routine. This performance at the US Open Championships earns him a sponsorship deal, and he then goes on to win 30 plus amateur titles in a row. He's phenomenal. When he's 14, he turns pro. He ends up with the Bones Brigade as part of Hal Peralta Skateboards. The founder of that, Stacy Peralta, said, quote, everyone else looked at a skateboard and said, okay, so you're right on the deck. Rodney looked at it and saw a three-dimensional object. You didn't necessarily need to ride on the deck. You could turn it upside down and skate on it. You could skate on the edge of it. And this is stuff that's unheard of at this point. Again, all you do at this point, if you're riding street or riding freestyle, is you push yourself and you ride along and maybe grab the board or do something with a little flair.
Maybe you bust out a manual.
So I'm going to pivot a bit now. We're not doing a lengthy going point by point through his career because I don't think that's the best way to do Rodney's story. It also, helps that Rodney isn't like Tony Hawk. He doesn't have he competed in the X Games this year, won these gold medals, etc., etc. Rodney is an inventor. He is a very cerebral person. I read an article where they talked about the type of person he is that when he was with the Bones Brigade, he once got so anxious he ran away from the tour at a rest stop in rural Maryland. He just left. He's a teenager and ran away. Because the way his brain works, while other, skaters, it's a bunch of teen boys at this point, were, looking for girls and pranking each other. Apparently he was practicing Diffie Qs. His brain just works in mathematics. And Because of that, it's important to note that Rodney is a genius. He is a genius. I don't know if you can have like the MacArthur Genius Grant or anything like that, but if you listen to him talk enough, you can tell he's a genius. And he's done plenty of TED Talks and public speaking engagements about like the mechanics of invention and creativity to know that, yes, when this man talks, he is seeing things at a higher plane than you. He graduates from high school, the P.K. Young Developmental Research School with a 4.0. He goes to University of Florida, studies biomedical engineering with a focus in mathematics before dropping out because his tour schedule is just too hectic. But he just sees things differently. So with that background, I want to get into the things that Rodney did for skateboarding. As I said, freestyle skating at this point, pretty simple. We don't have to relitigate that. With his understanding of mechanics, motion, and engineering, Rodney saw things that others couldn't. So I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise here. Can either of you name a freestyle or a street skating trick?
Kickflip.
Rodney invented it. James?
Pop shove it.
He didn't invent that one. Close.
I'm going to try and pull some out. You said try and pull some out. I got you.
You did. But thankfully Diaz got the first one there.
Are we okay? Well, if we're trying to guess ones that he invented,
you don't have to guess one. I was just going to give you each one guess and see if you said something that he invented. But James, if you would like to try say something else,
no, I'm saying the pop shove. It's great. Down B on the GameCube, Tony Hawk Underground.
I actually looked that up to see who invented the pop shove it. I could not find it out. So yeah, he is not taking credit for. Yeah, Greg Popovich actually invented it.
Yeah, Pop did.
So the first and most important invention that Rodney Mullen made was the ollie. For those who don't know, the ollie is the foundation of all skateboarding, essentially. It just means jumping with the board from a standing position. It technically was originally invented for vert skating by a man named Alan Gelfand to use to get more air coming out of like a pool/bowl. But like no one ever thought to do it on flat ground. Rodney was the first person to figure it out. So to do an ollie on the ground without the momentum of, going down and up out of a bowl, the skateboarder crouches and jumps directly upward. And as they begin to jump, instead of lifting their feet off the board, they strike the tail of the board against the ground, which to make the board go nose first, while keeping their foot on the board. They slide the shoe towards the nose, and bend their ankle, and the friction causes the board to flip up in the air with your feet on it. At the peak of the jump, you then lift your rear leg, push your foot forward, which levels the board, keeps it in contact. Principal components of this are force and friction. The more you push on the rear end of the skateboard, the more friction generated by sliding the foot back, the higher you get. The current record for the highest flat ground ollie is 45 inches. Pretty good for, again, just from a standing position. In 2012, Rodney explained how he first came up with the flat ground ollie. Quote, "When I saw him," meaning Gelfand, "do it on the wall, I'm thinking the mechanics of it. How do you get your board off the ground? How would you get your board off the ground like you did on the wall? Because I'm stuck on flat ground. I'm not weightless. The first ones I did took about, 5-10 minutes. I realized that's just the same motion I've been doing for years. It's a seesaw motion. That's how ollies work. It's just a punch and a little hop. And the real key to it was dragging your foot and leveling out, which brings the board up. And now it would be impossible to imagine any street skating without the ollie, with how ubiquitous it is for just moving from street to sidewalk or any other different elevation, or as a base for essentially all flip tricks. You can't do a flip trick without an ollie. So Rodney continues to innovate on the ollie, and what's interesting is at this point, it's not like, wow, this guy created an ollie, let's all do this. People were still like, that's kind of a little weird. We're going to keep our, little choreographed routines on the ground. But then he invents the kickflip, which I think is fair to call possibly the most iconic of all skateboarding tricks. I mean, it's the first one that Diaz said. I'm sure everyone has seen the Tony Hawk video of him driving past skaters saying, "Do a kickflip." So to perform a kickflip, first you ollie into the air, and then you lift your back foot from the board while sliding your front foot diagonally forward and towards the heel side. The front foot motion, which is called the flick, spins the board, flipping it completely over, then stop the spin by returning your feet to the board as it nears its original position. Most people who are listening, I'm sure, can picture that in their mind. But once he does that, it opens up the possibility of, well, what else can I do when I flip the board into the air? This now gets people's attention. We're like, oh, that's a lot more interesting than, what we're doing before. And I don't want to say this kind of leads to the end of freestyle skating, but the more you're able to do off the ground from a standing position, the more we get closer to modern street skating, which is why Rodney is considered the godfather of modern street skating. And he has dozens of other influential tricks that he's invented. It will take way too long to go through all of them. So the only other one I want to mention, just because it shows his mindset, is the impossible. I don't know if you know the impossible. It's a 360-degree spin of the board around your foot, which is similar to spinning a baton, like from rhythmic gymnastics. When he first had this idea and shared it with some of his peers, they all thought it was physically impossible to do, hence the name. And now that is a, still an extremely difficult trick, but it's a pretty standard trick.
That one is up B on the GameCube controller in Tony Hawk Underground, as opposed to the Pop Shove It. I could have gone with that, and then you would have gotten me.
So, like I said, he's invented dozens of other tricks that are pretty standard now in street skating. But I don't want to just talk too much about that. I want to talk more about the way Rodney skates. It's interesting in that, in contrast to his early years, where, we've talked about skateboarding a couple times on this podcast, 80s and 90s is a lot of, camcorder videotapes that get sent through the mail to everybody, a lot of like Thrasher videos, all these tricks. And he did do that as part of the Bones Brigade. But skateboarding for Rodney is kind of a spiritual exercise where he almost exclusively skates solo at night, completely isolated from other people. This is where he kind of comes up with his ideas for tricks and things like that. So there are actually very few videos of Rodney actually skating over the past 2 decades. Like anything that you will find is usually for a video for his TED Talk that he did at USC. He came out on a skateboard. He also did a mechanics of a trick video for Tony Hawk 10 years ago. But in general, he's very private about this. He once said, I go skating every night, usually from 1 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. I usually go mellow skating right when the sun is going down and catch the sunset along the beach, but that's just mellow cruising. It's not the intense stuff that's at night. Every night. I kind of average a day off every week or two. I keep vampire hours, but I always go back to them because it's the time when it's private and yours. Skating has always been that for me. And it's interesting to me because Rodney kind of downplays a lot of the stuff that he's done for skateboarding. He has talked about other people calling him, a genius, things like that. He doesn't really like that, but the way he sees skateboarding as I can't even really say sport because he sees it as a creative art. He thinks it's a creative endeavor and is always looking at it as a way well, what can you physically do if you have the right mechanics? And with that, he essentially created an entire form of skating because now the two different skating disciplines are vert and street skating. And street skating would not exist without the things that Rodney did. So even though he doesn't like to really take credit for that, it is because of him. I need to give him that credit.
Is it more impressive that he birthed one or killed a different one?
That's the interesting thing where, I spent a lot of time looking at, isn't freestyle skating just the precursor to street skating? They seem so similar. one feels like the natural evolution of the other. But reading like what skaters talk about, they don't feel that way. They feel that it's totally separate. So it is interesting in that his innovations killed one to create another. And, you know, it's hard to find like a popularity list of like, is street skating more popular than vert skating? I don't know. But is it more accessible? 100%. And because of Rodney's innovations of what you could do with a skateboard in the street, that led to things like Love Park becoming a world famous skateboarding destination. It opened the eyes of other skaters to the possibilities of what you could do just on the street. And similar to, Jason Belmonte 3 weeks ago, where you're breaking something to build it up better. That's kind of what Rodney did here with freestyle skating in street skating. I also want to say he also broke himself in a way. So this is interesting about Rodney. There's the saying that the best skaters are the best fallers because you have to be able to fall and get up. You hurt yourself real bad with skateboarding. And in the early 2000s, Rodney had gotten hurt so much that he essentially had his right hip fused with his leg, and there was so much scar tissue built up that he couldn't skate anymore. After, a period of depression and coping with that, he essentially retaught himself how to skate by switching to a different stance. Skaters have two stances. There's regular and there's goofy. Goofy is usually left foot forward or right foot forward. Sorry,
Pushing off your left foot.
Yes, right foot forward, pushing off your left. So he taught himself goofy, but also what he did is he took wrenches and knife handles and would skate out, or I guess drive out to the middle of nowhere, go out on the skateboard, and beat himself in the hip with these blunt instruments nonstop for months and months and months. And it actually broke up the scar tissue that had fused his hip and his leg together, and he was able to skate again.
So he saw when Fonzie punches a jukebox and then just did that to himself with a wrench. How? There's a point where he had to have doubted whether or not that was going like how many hits in? About 100 hits in? He's like, I don't actually know if this is going somewhere.
So he said, for me, it was a grind to a halt until I could barely walk, really. I took about a couple of years, a year and a half of breaking myself apart pretty medievally. As I did so, I realized that it was helping me unravel my stance. Since now I've just been investigating or pushing myself to try to take apart my stance so that I no longer have one. His idea, by essentially breaking up his hip and having to relearn different stances, he was able to do anything switch. So he no longer had a stance. And because of that, he's able to further innovate on how to, street skate. He essentially made himself one of those ambidextrous pitchers where he could just do everything either side, which opened up the ability to switch between them mid-trick by literally breaking all the scar tissue off his hip with wrenches for a year and a half.
I also feel like there's a better tool than wrenches, like a rubber mallet.
Well, so if you used was knife handles. So I don't know
also,
if maybe
there's a better tool than that.
Maybe he didn't have any rubber mallets. You never know.
Knife handles are very close to knives. That's why I wouldn't use knife handles.
Also, if you're hitting yourself with the knife handle, what are you holding on to?
Exactly my
That's
point.
Why you get the
it
sheath.
seems like there's a lot of...
But that was just an interesting story about Rodney. But really, that's the stuff I wanted to talk about with him. Like I said, he's like Jason Belmonte in that he broke his sport to reinvent it. And now people love Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk is the most popular skater. If you ask someone to name a skateboarder, they'll say Tony Hawk. But if you ask a skateboarder to name the most influential skater or who's the most important to skateboarding, it's going to be Rodney Mullen. skateboarding as it functionally is, at least street skateboarding, would not exist without Rodney. The ollie, the kickflip would not exist without Rodney. So I think it would be nice to recognize Rodney Mullen in the Hall of Guy.
It's a compelling case. He literally destroyed one of the forms of competition of his sport. Like, that's a pretty broken game. And the game broke him, which is also a twist on this I like. So, I mean, I come to skateboarding as not someone who can do it at all. I want to be clear. I can't fucking stand on a board to save my life. I've tried many times. I just don't have it in me. I need 2 wheels, not 4 little ones. But despite that, like, I still had a bunch of friends who did that. I would, like, take photos of them a lot of the time. I could be helpful in that way because I wasn't someone that wanted to get on the board. I was fine just being a photographer. And I played a shitload of Tony Hawk, specifically Tony Hawk Underground, which is why that has kept coming up during this, specifically on the GameCube for what it's worth. I put hours and hours into that game. And, like, what's interesting is, I mean, first off, like, the ollie is the A button in any of these games. Yeah. Like, the ollie is the most fundamental input in any of these video games. So if we're talking about how integral he is to that, it's there. The stance in particular, I love thinking about because in that game, it is just tapping the L trigger. And there you go. You've switched stances now. And there's nothing that really, like, at least in Tony Hawk Underground, maybe it's changed going forward. But, like, it fundamentally does not alter it. And to know what he had to go through to get to that point, to be able to do something that a video game character does with that push of a button that is hugely unrealistic is very enlightening. The biggest thing, though, is if you play that game, you also might think that Rodney Mullen is not that good because Rodney Mullen is chronically, I looked this up, been very underrated in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series. His scores are pretty low. He's one of, by those scores, the worst skaters in the game. I was very curious about this, looked into why. And apparently, one of the first times he met the developers was like, yeah, I don't play a lot of this game. And they just got kind of petty and have nerfed his scores as a tradition ever since then. And I think that's great. I support Rodney Mullen having a life outside of video games. If only I could aspire to such a thing.
It reminds me of the pettiness of the NBA Jam creator making it so that, like, it was in the game's code that if it was Pistons Bulls and it was within 3 with under a minute, the Bulls could not make a shot. Yes. It was literally impossible for them to make a shot.
I am putting my thumb on the scale, damn it.
And it felt like it was an appropriate amount because it's like, listen, if you got Pistons Bulls and you're the Bulls, got to be up by like 10 going into that final minute.
Take care of business before then. That's all. I mean, it's your favorite skater's favorite skater. It's one of those situations. You know, we talked about like the band that broke up immediately, but everyone got into them. This is the different thing where it's like one of those influential bands and then they just stuck around forever and are still doing their underground shit. And everyone's like, oh, that's really who you want to be into. And what I love is it took a nerd coming into this, you know, kind of, I don't want to say grungy scene because grunge didn't even exist in 76, but you know, this kind of bum scene that his dad didn't inappropriately assign to it at the time. But you just had to have one fucking nerd come in there and start using math and shit. This is skateboard sabermetrics, really.
It's skateboard sabermetrics and it's skateboard MIT, where we have literal MIT graduates that have met with Rodney and called him untapped talent because they're like, hey, we haven't looked for people that can help us learn more about physics and engineering in skateboarding before. Maybe we should have done that in the past because they're doing it and it's because of him.
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I sure as shit enjoyed Rodney Mullen. And I think he's got a solid chance a couple weeks down the line.
I think he has a good chance, but it is by a yet to be determined criteria that we have about 5 weeks to figure out what we're actually.
That's true. We do need to discover how much of a chance he has. We'll figure that out in due time. But that will have to wait for the future, as will Rodney Mullen's fate. But folks, you don't need to wait for the future if you want to keep up with Remember That Guy, because you can go to bit.ly/Remember That Guy, all one word, all lowercase, where you will find every single thing about this. Go ahead and join the Discord if you want to hear about cycling. I will probably keep it shut until the Tour de France, but man, I've decided I'm just going to like blather into the nether for that one this year, guys. Get ready, because work lets me log into HBO as long as it's slow enough. And
that's awesome.
As long as it's like, Oh, yeah, tennis just on the background that you can turn away from at any point. Yeah, why not? That's fine.
I was watching the French Open earlier, and
Yeah. It's great background noise.
Someone said he'd kick a ball at a ball girl and get away with it. Crazy shit.
He shouldn't have been standing there.
Anyway, you can find that. You can find our Blue Sky handle. You can find everything about Elite, an excellent podcast series that you should stream from the makers of RTG. But that is everything you can find out there. What you can find out here are the people that we want to thank, which include producer Craig and the coders behind him. For 1 second, let me just say, I say that every time, and maybe you've never given another thought to it. This audio recording bot is being put together by fucking angels, who just put out yet another free update, an incredible user interface, just complete facelift, honestly. And I've kicked them a couple bucks a few times. Hey man, if you ever want to show your thanks for this show, there's 2 places you can send money to that will make up for that. One is Wikipedia. The other is the coders behind producer Craig. God bless him. Thank you as well to musical director Don Ham for our lovely theme music. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us once again. Next time we come around, I will still be one of your hosts, James.
I'll still be the very special guest, Xavier.
And I'll be Diaz. And as the song by Eiffel 65 goes, I'm blue, bada di, bada guy.
Hello, Karen. We've definitely gotten Foley from so yeah, I mean, come on, dude. Be our second baby, Foley.
It is beautiful to see because the first time I met him, there was not recognition in the eyes. There's oh shit, there's things going on here.
Behind them now.
Diaz, I don't mean to put you on spot here, but you are the only person that can answer this question. Which baby better? You're the only person that has met both babies.
Which baby better?
Let's rephrase the question. I don't want there to be a qualifier. No qualifier. Just gun to your head, which baby, end of question mark.
Which baby? This is like Sophie's Choice, but it's I have no necessarily.
No, because
I don't
you
have
might be
blood
saying
invested.
which baby gets thrown in a wood chipper. I'm just saying, what's the answer to which baby?
Which baby? End of sentence.
Just which baby?
I choose you.
I will say Kieran simply because his
Okay.
name exists in the canon of this podcast, whereas your baby's name has
Yeah,
and
I
I
don't
fully
think we've
respect, has not been said on the podcast.
That's fair. No, that's
And I
absolutely
honor
fair.
that. And I honor that by choosing the one whose name I can say, which
There we
is
go.
Kieran.
There we go. And you know what? If I said it before, I'm just going to keep bleeping it.